Okay, we're going live now on episode 22. We're going to try to do with these is, this is an evolving podcast. We really can't wait to get some guests. That's something we're working on for the future, but we want to be pretty consistent with that. Wanted to kind of get our feet wet with this. So
yeah, we got a good list of guests and stuff that we're going to bring on eventually. So
yeah,
we're excited about that.
In the meantime, though, we want to stick to these topics. Stick to a certain topic and kind of go from there and just hit it pretty hard. And it's kind of the way we do the videos in general. And so this is going to be kind of an expanded form of strategy video or whatever based on topic with a little fun because we always have Jen's Got Jokes and her mailbag too. So
and I'm funny.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm here to keep you on task.
On task and entertained because I'm not that entertaining. I'm sorry, folks. So just the way it is. Today we have a good topic, and it's something near and dear to my heart. It's called trespassing, and I put up on the board trespassing scum, and then I exited out. I thought you might not care for that. That might be too harsh. You might want me to tone it down.
Yeah,
what's
maybe
your opinion?
I hate trespassers, so I don't know. Scum is probably a good word to use. I'm sure there's a lot of other words we can come up with.
And I look at it like there's that accidental trespasser. That's a little bit different.
Sure.
Somebody who's just not paying attention to the line, somebody who walks over and walks around a tree and
sees something exciting out there. I probably would be a guilty person. I'd be like, oh, what's that over there?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, and then a quarter mile later, you're picking up an antler.
Right, yeah. So.
I think there's a difference. There's someone who's willfully? Willfully.
I don't know if that's a word you should
I think
use
it's willfully.
at this time of the day.
We're shooting this in the morning early because Dylan's coming to film today at 9, and we want to get 2 podcasts done before he gets here. So that's we got up early.
Here we are.
But I think there's people that willfully want to take, and that's the thing about trespassers. It's someone that's stealing. They're stealing your recreational rights. They're stealing your hunting opportunity. They're stealing your antlers, your morel mushrooms, and those are, well, we can talk about mushrooms in a second, but the morels are near and dear to Jen's heart. I mean,
very.
Yeah. So there is a difference from people that are trying to do that, and it's interesting because I'll get comments on YouTube, Instagram, social media, and I think I've shared these with you sometimes where they're actually saying something like, anybody should be allowed to go on anybody's land. Who cares about trespassers? The only person I've ever heard talk about that is someone who doesn't own land.
Okay, I was going to say I've never heard anyone say that as a
landowner. Those are normally people that don't hunt on private land, don't respect landowner rights on private land because they don't have any private land or anybody that they respect that owns private land.
Yeah.
And certainly not themselves because if they pay the taxes and they know how hard it was to get to the point to even own land.
Oh, yeah.
Then they wouldn't say that. That's so that right there kind of like throws up a wall like, you don't have any experience with it. So there's a lot of that in the hunting industries like that, like crazy. People voice their opinions but have zero experience with it. But in their little corner of their little world, they're an expert. So
everyone's an expert
in the hunting industry because there's no measurables like we talked about before. Right. But trespassing scum, and I know number one up there is get aggressive. Now, Jen, what would that mean to you? Get aggressive.
If I know we have trespassers out there, I'm going to put different cameras up. I'm going to be watching those. If I see or we see somebody on our land, we're going out there immediately. Even the land we hunt in Wisconsin, we had a couple people out there trespassing a few weeks ago, and you contacted John.
Well, what was cool is we have people working nearby that know no one's supposed to go up there, so 2 individuals are going through the land, and I get a text right away.
Yeah, like, hey, there's people up there, and you're like, oh, no. So contact John, and John was kind enough to send his wife up there with the side-by-side. I think one of their kids were in town or over as well, but they didn't end up seeing him. Anyways, if there's somebody on your property, likely they know they're already trespassing. Get them off. And
really, there's no excuse nowadays.
No, absolutely not.
There's no excuse. It's so easy to download free portions of apps and see where you're at. We use HuntWise, but there's so many services out there that are free. There's literally no excuse. You can see the line, folks,
Right.
when you're trespassing. So when I look at it, get aggressive, it's any and all of the above. It's, and we're going to talk about some of these right here, but the bottom line is, when I wrote this point out, it really refers to you, the first-time landowner, first-time lease owner, lease user. And let's just back up with leases and owning land. Ever since the beginning, leasing land is a way for, I don't want to say the poor man, but it's a way for someone who can't afford to buy land to actually hunt on good land. It takes some sacrifices. For example, in the past, I cut out all ball leagues. I used to love to play softball. Didn't even shoot a lot of archery leagues like I used to. Bowling, I have friends that bowl. They'll bowl 1 to 2 times a week for 36 weeks, and then they're buying booze and food every one of those nights. I mean, they're spending a couple $1,000s a year at least in bowling, but they can't afford a lease. So sometimes it just takes sacrifice, and the sacrifice. We don't. Yeah. We like going fishing in Canada, but pretty much we just do our hunting stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty much
family and friends.
Yeah, hunting, family, friends. I like that.
Yeah, hunting,
HFF.
family, friends. Go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Pretty much.
So, but anyways, it takes sacrifice. And so I don't like, there's sometimes people will talk down on people that lease. It's because they're used to hunting the land for free. That's the only reason they care. And it's a shame. I had someone the other day, they said they couldn't find leases. Now there's areas like that where it's hard to find a lease. My suggestion with them, and I think I shared that text with you, was something along the lines of expect to pay what the land is worth.
Right.
And that's a lot of times people say, well, I'm not interested in leasing. Around here, a 40-acre parcel is worth anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. 100 acres, you could get 4 to 6, depending on the parcel.
Sure.
So when you go to a landowner that's never been used to leasing, and you say, well, that 120 acres you have, I'm willing to pay you $5,000 a year, then those kind of numbers start talking. And so that's another thing too. But still, $5,000 an acre for a year or for a parcel that's probably worth between $700,000 and $800,000. So right. Your initial expense is greatly
decreased.
So you're getting this property for the first time. We've done that, leasing, owning, whatever it might be. If you have potential trespassing concerns, you need to nip those in the bud right now.
Immediately.
Yeah. And because they only fester.
Well, and sometimes, too, the previous landowner has had these people here before or know of these people that come in and trespass on the property to shed hunt or morale hunt. And likely sometimes they have already told you, and sometimes having those conversations with people can be pretty difficult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and
I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been on this property.
And you guys have all seen that. I think one of the things I run into with landowners all the time, again, I hate to repeat this, but as a group, we'll work with over 300 clients this year around the country, and I would say that's going to be 20 to 25 different states. I've worked in 26 states over this is my 20th season going to client parcels. Oof. Yeah, I'm getting old. You didn't know I was that old, did you?
That hits you a little bit.
Did you?
I don't think so.
You didn't know I was that?
We never had that conversation.
Yeah, we never talked about age, so
uh-oh.
Let's just move along.
Okay, keep going.
But anyways, no, when working with clients, that is a common, and we'll even say, like, when we go over the property in the beginning of the day, we'll talk about, say, do you have any trespassing concerns on any of your lines? And most of the time, the biggest concerns are from folks that allowed someone to hunt on their land because they were there previously, they felt guilty, and then now they've had this period of time where that person's taking advantage of them. And it all starts by, hey, can I just, if I get a deer, I'll let you know. It goes on your property. Sure, no problem. Yeah, I know your stand's 40 yards, 20 yards off the border. You're facing my land, but, no problem. Just let me know. Pretty soon they're wandering around your property. They're bringing their friends. They're shed hunting. They're morel hunting. That's the way it works. Mm-hmm. I've seen it time and time again. So you have to get aggressive, and you have to get aggressive to the point of making enemies. And that is why, and I'm not just making this up, that is why there's the saying, good fences make good neighbors.
Yep.
And
Build
so
the fence.
we built kind of a fence last year in one spot.
Which one?
Poles. We put poles and rods all the way across on our survey because we have a problem around here. It must be an animal that takes survey markers and posts that you pay for to put out, and they just all of a sudden disappear.
No idea where they go.
We don't know where they go. They just disappear, and then you put them out again, and then they disappear again. We've had that because we've had them marked 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, the farmer's moving over, and it's you have to get aggressive with those lines. We've even gone to the point around here where we're not getting really aggressive, but we found that instead of this great thought of we'll have this switchgrass bank, we have a tunnel down the middle we're going to walk on. And we'll hide for ourselves from the fields and from the inside. We have to have that trail, but then we also have to have one around on the outside of the property because then that sets a boundary. This is our land. This is where we're going to access on, and then someone doesn't encroach over, whether it's for farming, walking, hiking, whatever it is. You put that line in the sand, so we have to have that trail around our fields, even though those fields are marked. I mean, we're exactly where our line is.
And it's okay to talk to the adjacent landowners too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially for us around here, it's all farmers.
We don't have any problems around here.
No, we really don't. And I think part of that is, they have these kids that are farming for these, older farmers, and so they'll see a fence post here and there, and they've been farming this specific, extra 50 feet for
times 300 yards.
Yeah, right. For the last 20 years, and no one has said anything until, we decide to have that surveyed. So I think sometimes
and that's more of a different, we have a give take. We have areas where we give 3/4 of an acre here to gain 1/10 of an acre over here for better access. We have a good relationship with the farmers around here because they access through our land, they access on our roads. And we do the same, and it's just that's something that's kind of a nice balance between that because they're not hunters.
You have a box elder bug on your right shoulder, and if it was a spider, I'd be out of here.
That's Freddie.
Oh, okay.
That's Freddie. Freddie, I'll go make him go somewhere else. Is he gone or?
Yeah, Freddie's gone.
Yeah, Freddie hangs around. He's pretty cool. He drinks a little milk here and there, but other than that, he's
pretty quiet.
Yeah, he doesn't bug me.
That was not planned, folks.
How could it be? But anyways, you have to get aggressive. And so problems fester when you don't take care of them to begin with. And what I found is there's a lot of people that have, almost made enemies with their neighbors because they're just putting their foot down. They have 40 acres. They worked really hard. They don't want a neighbor encroaching on that. There was a little bit of friction in the beginning, but within 2 or 3 years, good neighbors for life. And I think it works the other way most of the time, where if you don't put your foot down, seems like you have a good relationship to begin with, but then it keeps eroding over time, and there's a lot of resentment built up. There's a lot of friction, and it just doesn't go away. It gets a lot worse, and then when you burn a bridge, at that point, it's bad. Then you're not going to be friends for life. So if you put your foot down first, it's kind of like kids. It's hard to do, but you got to be strict with them. If you're strict with them and show love at the same time, they eventually come around. That's just the way it is.
Good balance.
So, good balance. That's why good fences make good neighbors.
I like that.
So one of the things, number 2, pursue and prosecute. You can't just be blowing smoke.
Nope.
You have to do something about it. Have you ever had to do that? Have you ever had to pursue and prosecute?
I'm trying to think. I remember having a trespasser that I knew was walking on the property because I got him on camera. Jumped on the 4-wheeler.
Did you know him?
No idea who they were. Jumped on the 4-wheeler and went out and hello, you're trespassing.
Let me ask you, were you loaded?
Yeah, it sure was. But and 2, you don't know who you're gonna.
Excuse me.
And 2, you don't know who you're gonna run into these days.
No.
So it's not. It's of course you never will expect or want to ever use a weapon or whatever. And I don't remember if I was open carrying. Maybe I was. I don't remember. Anyways, but this person was just like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just walking my dogs because they're on the snowmobile trail, which used to go through the property." And so, then you just let these people know, like, "Hey, we're trapping back here." And as soon as you let your dog loose, if he gets in one of these traps, like it's going to be an expensive vet bill for you, but then too, it's just like this isn't a public hiking trail.
No, I've seen that where people have literally taken a tractor and they've cleared out a 6-foot walking path through someone's land with a blower during the middle of the winter next to a neighborhood. And people are just out there walking. We're out there for a client visit and they're just walking around. So
yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Anyway, so I've had a few interactions with people like that. Never have had somebody that's been hostile or anything like that. Everybody is very polite because, again, they know they're doing something wrong.
Right.
So what other option do they have?
I had one talk about pursuit. I think I've told you the story.
Oh, yeah.
And so I come out, and I've told Jen this story, but I would go out to Wisconsin and hunt only cold fronts. I ran a successful real estate appraisal business for 11 years, and that overlapped with this for about 5 or 6. Should have ended that career sooner just so I could really work on this harder a couple years earlier, but shoulda, coulda, woulda, type thing. I needed to value my time. So when I came and hunted, I needed to make sure that I actually had a chance of shooting a buck. And so I really learned to hunt from the early 90s. That was a money and time thing, time off thing where I could take a half day at a time. And that's where I came up with the weather algorithm. These are the days I want to hunt. So I would come down to Wisconsin to hunt. It was 7 hours just to hunt an evening and a morning or an evening, just one sit. And you know me, I'd do that.
Yep, sure do.
But that was when I thought I had a chance. So the week before, like week and a half before, I saw this nice 10-point go over the saddle in the field, go from one corner to the other. And finally, a week later, whatever it was, I saw those really cold temperatures. And it was sometime, early to mid-October where it wasn't rut yet, but I wanted to rely exclusively on those temperatures. I travel all the way down, get in the stand, set the stand, and new stand location, corner of this woodlot, waiting for him to come over, just like that pattern that I saw just a few days earlier. And it was getting towards that magical hour.
The bewitching hour.
Probably 45 minutes to go, like where I'm getting excited. All of a sudden I hear a four-wheeler. And the four-wheeler just keeps coming closer and closer. And I'm on a land that, we were leasing it. We could have never afforded it. I still, when it went for sale, I couldn't buy it. It was 190 acres right around there. And we leased it for 12 years. Different story altogether, but bottom line is there's no one supposed to be out there. I'm in the middle of the land. And it comes closer, closer. All of a sudden this side-by-side goes by. And it seemed like there's some kids in it. They went by pretty close. I almost jumped out of the stand. I got halfway down the tree and got out of there. Ran.
Were you yelling?
No, because I still was looking at it like you're still on the land. You're still like in hunting mode. It's like I didn't want to add to it.
So you're trying to be quiet.
Yeah.
Stealthy.
So I'm running after him, and when I'm running, I have the saws coming out. I had thrown my bow down by this tree. I just got out of there, and they look back and talking to the landowner later. His kids are saying, like, Daddy, there's someone chasing us with a big knife. And that was when the saw came out, and I'm running, and my hunt's ruined. I drove 7 hours one way and stayed at a hotel. I probably was going to try to come back that night, sleep in a parking lot. Was the way I did it back then. This is 20 years ago. But hunt's ruined. And so, talk about someone stealing from you and taking your time. So I just well, it's done. I still have like 45 minutes before dark. So I got out of there as fast as possible. Still had like 20 minutes to drive around town and look for that side-by-side. And looked, and it happened to be like 3 houses away. Sure enough, I see that side-by-side parked up in the garage. And you can picture the garage.
Yep, sure. See it up there.
So I go up and knock on the homeowner's door. And when you do this, you have to realize that not everyone is a taker. They're not trying to steal from you. But I was pretty keyed up, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But I went up to that person, knocked on the door, went up to that house, came to the door, and right away, we started a conversation that's still going to this day 20 years later. He's a friend of mine. In fact, it led into actually hunting on his land, which I've done now for, this will be the 11th season. So between the neighbor and that neighbor, that'll be 23. This is my 23rd season down here, I think, which is 22nd season, something like that. And so the bottom line is, I went up to that person. I was ready to.
You were ready to battle.
Not a hunter, just going for a joyride.
With his kids.
Didn't realize the damage that could be done. And we had a really good conversation, exchanged numbers, looked forward to talking to him later. He ended up letting me access through his land during dark hours, morning or afternoon, or after dark, so I could more easily access the land we were hunting. And stopped hunting that property, moved over to this property, and it's been really nice relationship all this way.
Mm-hmm. So, real nice people.
But again, though, I was up for pursuing and prosecuting, and I've had other stories too. Be a little nuts. Maybe this individual thought I was a little nuts when I came to his door, but I've had it up in the UP in Michigan where I had a trespasser. They did donuts out in a freshly planted clover field. Mile and a half back from the road, 3/4 of a mile back onto the property. They had to drive through national forest to get there, which was a no-no.
See, I feel like that is where the female psychotic would come out, and people would run. Can you? Because I know where you were at, in the time of life then, and I mean, you were weighing your seed because that is all you could afford. So this amount of seed goes here, this amount of seed goes there. So when someone does that, especially when they have to go so far out of their way to do something like that.
And run over trees to get there.
I think I would be a little homicidal and very psychotic.
Well, and what I ended up doing was, and like Jen said, I weighed out my seed. Meaning like at 14 food plots totaling 8.35 acres, kind of like Greg, Jen's stepdad, he has 1.1 acres and he measures it out to the T, whether it's 0.32 acres or 0.15 or 0.08, he measured out. And so what I would do is I would pre-measure my bags of seed. It's all I could spend. And so I would have these Ziploc bags of seed or containers, whatever it was, and I would mark them for planting day. And if I ran out on one, I had to hope I didn't run out on another so that I could rob from Peter to pay Paul. And so that's the game I was playing. I wanted full coverage, but I had to go a little bit later on another one or just not plant that portion. And so when this person's out there, I aggressively pursued, and even to the point of being a little nuts. And I had people up there before that went through with ATVs. We figured out their rentals. They had helmets on. I put up flyers in local party stores, went around, knocked on doors, gave out flyers to them, offered a reward. Never came to anything other than people in the neighborhood thought I was probably a little bit nuts. And in this case, the ATV track had a middle ridge in it that was actually open all the way around the middle of the tire. And so I was able to go to all the turnoffs in the dirt roads in the area, and about 7 miles away found, by going from corner to corner to corner, where this ATV went around and following that one kind of different track, I was able to go right to a house. And went right to a house. And the mother came to the door. And I've told you this,
Forensic
right?
Jeff Sturgis.
Yes. Mother came to the door. And kind of like I said, someone trespassed. She obviously wasn't the trespasser. And I said, someone trespassed on our land, and told her where, riding their ATV. And she's like, oh, Johnny. He's not home right now, but he's supposed to be home pretty soon for dinner. And can you stay and we'll have a talk to him? And I'm like, yes. Because I don't really care about actually, I just want to make sure. I know Mom's going to put the fear of God into him more than the sheriff department at this point. And so when he came home, he got a tongue lashing, and she asked me, please don't prosecute. And it all ended up really good. And he never came back, never even came close to coming back.
I wouldn't come back after she probably yelled at me.
He came up, to his credit, he came up and apologized, said he would never come back. Mom made him do that. But it all ended up good. You just have to be a little flexible. And in that case, by not prosecuting, it was probably, having pictures, watching them go around a sign, that kind of stuff. Even if I had all that, it was just a good confrontation. And so was the one that I talked about before, but you have to be a little bit aggressive and pursue.
It's okay to be nuts sometimes.
So when I say prosecute, in that case, his mom was prosecuting. I hope that makes sense. In the other case, I was prosecuting. I was going to the door, having a chat with them. You just make sure it's not going to happen again. You get that feeling sometimes that it's going to happen again. So when you go talk to people, then, let them know that, let them know you mean business. Even being to the point of a little nuts.
Protect your investment.
Yeah, very much so. Of course, post your land. If there's any concerns at all, post your land.
Yep.
I had someone, a friend of mine, close friend of mine, and he went hunting with me in Pennsylvania before. But he would say, we never ran into posted signs. It's bad when you post. But then he has someone driving through his new food plot into his land up by his trailer, and eventually he was posting. Mm-hmm. And so there's that thought out there that you shouldn't, post because it looks ugly, it's offensive to your neighbors. But that's because you've never had any problem with trespassers.
Right.
So once you cross that line, you really embrace the posting. And so a lot of times when people haven't had problems, then they look at it like, well, why would you post? It looks ugly. It's obnoxious. So, but
just post it.
Just post it.
Just post.
Especially if you're new to the neighborhood, again, kind of letting that tone and putting that tone out. And if people don't like you at first, if someone doesn't like you because you're posting your land, who cares about them?
Right.
Then you don't want to be friends with that neighbor anyways. It's not that you don't have to be friends with them. You can be civil. But if they don't like you just sheerly because you're posting your land, then that's not a good person. And so look at it that way, kind of like if they really care. It's kind of like people in life. If people care how you act, work, run a business, let them do their thing. Just ignore them. And that's, you just have to do what you know is right. And I think I have
Did Fred come back?
I think Fred was in my head. He likes to hang out like right here.
It's weird.
Yeah, it is. But anyways, access along the property, I can't stress this enough. Most of the time, people have problems with fence sitters, meaning they're sitting on the...
Did you get him?
Fred's going down the back of my shirt. It must be warm.
Oh.
He's just trying to keep warm. Can't blame him. But posting along or accessing along your borders is critical. Mm-hmm. And we access along our borders because we have roads.
Yeah.
Roads through fields. But we added one down at the cairn.
Yeah.
Stan, we call that cairn. A lot less likely that someone will be hunting right down there. They know we're there.
Well, it's a lot of open timber, too. We didn't do anything with that open timber on purpose because we're using it solely for access.
Right. But accessing along your borders is critical. People are a lot less likely to put up a stand facing your border, facing your land. And I've seen it all. I've seen stands that are 5 feet off the line looking directly in.
It's right on your zipper. It's not Freddie.
It's not
What
Fred?
do you call that little fella?
That's a little ladybug.
Yeah.
Or beetle. That's Benny.
Benny
likes to fly. You hear him? That hit hard. Anyways, no, that's accessing along your borders is critical. When you have a stand or blind facing into your property, the best way to combat that, and it's almost like you have to combat it, but is to put a trail right along your border. A lot of times people say, well, the neighbor's been hunting there for 20 years in that spot, so I'm going to go around them by 100 feet. It's just so I don't disturb them. Now you just gave that landowner, you always think in terms of 33 feet times a quarter mile is an acre. So you just gave him 100 feet. You just gave him 3 acres of your land to go around. You gave him 3 acres.
Yep.
3 acres you can't improve. Can't improve for bedding. You don't put bedding right next to them.
Purchased.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How much did it cost you?
Right.
How much you pay taxes a year? Divide it out. See what that going around is actually costing you. Look at it just strictly black and white. You don't have to tell them you don't have to get confrontational. Take your stand down. You can just literally, you're accessing along the border. If they want to have their stand there facing your border, they're going to know that you're going to walk by, drive by at any time.
Yep.
I've had a landowner, I tell you that one about the tarps?
I don't think so.
Where it was opening day of gun. It's a 20-acre parcel in Michigan. So the landowner next to him builds a big condo 15 feet off his border facing into his property. In fact, they were two long skinny pieces accessing from opposite roads. They would come all the way through their parcel, get to the back of it, and hunt because everyone else's property is better, right? And but so they would go all the way through. They would climb up into that blind and look directly at my client's parcel. So I get out there in the springtime, and what's this big giant blue tarp doing? And literally, he laughed. Before opening day, what he did is he went out there and he tarped from tree to tree, big blue tarps, big vinyl tarps. So the guy, so the neighbor couldn't actually even get a view onto his land. It was blocked by a wall of tarps. Well, he went out there in the middle of the night and did that just so the guy would wake up in the morning, get out to his stand, and couldn't see a thing because he's looking onto his neighbor. And I've seen people build fences. Back in the day in the mid-'90s, Kevin and my brother and I took no trespassing tape and put it all around in the trees in front, so it made a no trespassing ribbon wall that they had to look through. And because we had a blind straight in front of them, 75 yards that they could shoot and hit somebody. But that was one of those 5 feet off the line. They put a blind 5 feet off the line facing into our property.
Yep. Just post it. Let them know you're there.
Yeah. The bottom line is those access roads around the outside are critical. Putting a road in really helps because, again, someone doesn't want to sit on your line when there's a road right there. It establishes a boundary, and that's really quick. And that's what trespassing's, combating trespassers, getting rid of trespassers is all about. You have to be firm. You have to set those boundaries. Again, that's going back to the fence thing. But once you do that, it makes trespassing problems go away. And what I found in the long term, it develops a lot healthier relationships between landowners because there's no resentment. There's nobody taking advantage of anybody because you have a clear boundary, and that's a really good thing. So, okay, that's it. That's today's discussion on trespassing.
No.
So we get mail.
We got mail.
Do we?
We do.
Okay.
So, most recent one, it's that time of year where people are cutting bedding before spring green up, before trees are starting to get any buds. One of the questions I saw just yesterday was, I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube. I'm still not quite understanding the bedding and where to put bedding and where to even start. If you could give someone other than watch this video or watch that video, what are the top two things, that advice that you could give somebody? This is where you should start with making a bedding area or increasing a bedding area.
One of the most important things is actually creating bedding next to food. It all starts there. So you have a food plot. You have a big food source, even if it's an ag field, which isn't a great food source. That's a topic for another discussion. It's actually really bad. But you have that ag, you have that food plot. You want screening next to that food plot. And that screening alone will now pull does and fawns closer to that food source, that afternoon food source. That's where they want to be. They want to be within 50 to 100 yards. If you don't have that screening, those deer might have to go back in the woods 150 yards before they can't see out into the field. Because anything that goes out into the field then, they feel stressed. They're going to go back in further and further till they get to their little happy spot. And that happy spot doesn't include watching you all day going back and forth, or a farmer's machine, ag field, whatever. So put that screening next to the food source. Now it pulls does and fawns that were more in the middle of the property or 100 yards back and puts them a lot closer to that food source. And then, so if I was creating bedding, I would make that bedding area right there. Now, when it comes to bedding, it's all about side cover. And that's a term that I came up with a long time ago to describe what was important with bedding, because there was so much cover that people were putting above their heads. And deer are not hiding from planes and birds. They're hiding from each other, from predators, and from hunters. That means you need side cover. So side cover needs to be more at hip high, not head high.
So for that side cover, what kind of trees are you cutting?
It depends. When you're working at a bedding area, the first thing to do is you have to get rid of canopy. That's the lowest hole in the bucket. You always work with the lowest hole, plug that, and then keep going up. Lowest hole in the bucket is removing big canopy trees. Once you remove those big canopy trees, now you can work on smaller stuff. People look at hinge cutting. Well, that's why we don't recommend hinge cutting on 85% of parcels, is because most people need to remove those big canopy trees first, and once you do that, you just accomplish 80% of your goal with only 20% of the work or less. Why work 80% more to accomplish the remaining 10, 15, 20%? Once you have that done, move on. Once you have that timber harvested by someone else, which is less risk and safer, move on. It'll regenerate, sunlight hits the ground, you get an explosion of growth. And what do deer need in their bedding areas the most? They need hardwood regeneration, shrub tips, briar tips.
Woody browse.
In the northern third of the country, which is where all the big whitetail, most of the big whitetail states are, meaning that when you have that hardwood regeneration, that's what gives them their food from October to March. If you do burnings, for example, back in the bedding area, which is more for southern areas, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, and south, you're producing herbaceous growth. And because you don't get frost till so much later in those southern areas, now the deer can live on that herbaceous growth during hunting season, where that herbaceous growth is done and not green before hunting season even begins in the north. And I'm not talking about the northern states, right along that line, Canadian line. I'm talking about the north, 2 to 3 states deep down into the central part of the country. So you have to have that woody regeneration, get sunlight to the ground. And there's so many different cuts, or so many ways to accomplish that. Let's say it's all pole timber that's 15 years old. You're going to have to do a lot of cutting because they're all equal age. They're all knocking into each other when you cut them down. If you have aspen, 4, 5, 6 inches, 7 inches on and on down, you can go in there, mow it down, not rip up the dirt, but mow it down with a forestry mulcher, let it regenerate, get 8,000 shoots per acre.
And
that's a really good tactic.
And you'll see that, the same year. So you and all this work that you're doing
like
for
right
this
now
bedding
is great.
area. Yeah, like even the few places that we cut from last year, we go in there, and it's insane the amount of regeneration that is in there just
awesome.
in a year. So it's really exciting. So you will see benefit, right away.
Well, a big part of the benefit, I've cut on a client property. I used to cut on a lot of client properties, and I've probably cut on, dozens of client days, cutting, 80, 100 days, whatever it's been, because I used to cut for several years. And we have Joel that comes out and helps us, so I still cut on property. But Joel's a true expert. I've been paid tens of thousands of dollars to cut on people's property for years. I've been cutting for 25 years. I'm not an expert. Joel is an expert.
He's an expert.
Yeah, he's incredible, the different cuts he has and can do and perform.
What he does with a chainsaw is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And we have some short videos that we've put out about that recently.
Yeah, take a look at
one just recently over the weekend, right first part of March. But anyways, that's, if you can have someone else cut, that's always a good thing. You have to get sunlight to the ground. But even just, I cut down for a client in September, and just putting that hardwood down on the ground and getting those tops and logs there, even though there's no regeneration, filled this property with deer. Because otherwise, they could just look through this whole 150-yard area that we cut down and put structure down in the ground so the deer could still weave in and around it. You don't want to make a tangled mess. I've also been on a client property where it's 5-acre cutting. There's a couple trails through it, and the deer weren't bedding within 100 yards of that because they get blocked in. They don't want to go into that big tangled mess because it's all dead ends. They're getting chased by a pack of dogs in southern Michigan, where this was, in flat country. They don't want to go into that cutting because they're literally going to get trapped, and they'll get
killed.
Killed. They'll either break their neck on something, which is common with dogs running deer, or they'll get eaten up by coyotes. They get to dead ends. So bottom line is, you want them to be able to weave and move around there, but just putting that structure on the ground and producing that side cover is that first step. And there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but it always starts with the food, the screening, doe bedding, and then if you have that and you have depth of cover that I teach, going back 150, 200 yards after that, then you'll have room for bucks. But if you don't do that to begin with, So many people go in and work on buck beds, which is just ridiculous. You go in and work on a buck bed, but you don't have the screening. You don't have that doe bedding area. And there's not a certain type of bed. Anyone who's scouted, I scout deer for a living. And anyone who's scouted those deer, then you find bedding areas. They all have some commonalities. They're side cover, hard to regen, shrub tips. It's diverse. Sunlight's hitting the ground in areas. There's a lot of commonality to where deer are bedding in these locations. So just make that. And then once you have that for does and you have that screening, then there's room for bucks left over. Let's finish with
Jen's Got Jokes.
Jen's Got Jokes.
This is a good one.
So what's this really good one you have right now?
What do you mean right now? My jokes are always good.
Okay.
What do you call a well-balanced horse? Don't overthink it.
Okay. I'm not.
Stable.
Anyways.
You weren't going to get it. I know it.
No, I wasn't going to get that. You guys, too, make sure to check out purewildlifeblends.com. You can find it on our website, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. Just click on store and seed. But we have all our blends out right now, a lot for spring. We always plan to have our products in stock. Do we ever run out?
Not very often. If we do, it's like for a day or two.
In January or December. Yeah, when people aren't buying it.
Right. It's never during, any time after that. So
I refer to Jen on that because she's the one that, makes sure that happens along with Wes. They project out, and we've been selling long enough now. This will be our second full year that we're going through right now. July will be 2 years. June will be two years, right around there.
Yeah. Exciting stuff.
So, yeah, and we changed it to pure because, again, we want to have pure seed, meaning no inert matter, no coatings. We actually pay extra to have coating removed within some of our blends because that coating takes up space, meaning you think you're getting 10 pounds of seed, you only get 7. There's a lot of companies that do that.
Yep.
We don't, and that's our goal. We'll be the last company, and we're going to pay a lot for it because every year they're coating more and more seed to improve profit margin for seed.
Yep,
Major
it's harder to get
wholesalers.
It's harder to get uncoated seeds, unfortunately.
Right. So, and bottom line is, I've been planting food plots since 1995. I've experimented. I've written about it. I've given speaking events. I have books, web classes on it. It's something I do with a high level of degree and a passion and experience for many decades. I've helped another seed company that started. I put that in there, and now we put it and infuse that experience and that level of experience into our own blends. And we're always trying to improve too. So between the purity of the seed, the purity of the blends, and the experience and expertise that goes into those blends from that's decades old, it's in there. So check it out. We thank you for watching all the way now to the end.